Hello, everybody, uh, and a very good morning to you. This is Joe Firestone for Empowering Democracy, and our topic for this live stream on this fine morning is debt ceiling redux. So, of course, I'll explain what that means in a moment. But for now, I want to say good morning to Around the World with Brandy and Dee, a fine new series on foreign policy. The Brandy is Brandy Weaver, and the D is Dolores Pierce. There was a panel discussion last Saturday on the Supreme Court case that may see the end of the right to boycott, and that was platformed by Around the World with Brandy and Dee. And I was on the panel for that particular discussion, and I commend it to all of you. So Dee is here this morning. Thank you, Dee, for sharing Empowering Democracy. We certainly appreciate it. Hello, Kay. How are you? It's great to see you this morning. So our topic for the present is Empowering Democracy, Debt Ceiling Crisis Redux. I'll start by sharing an old piece that appeared in the American Prospect. And this piece is called How the GOP Could Win Its Long War Against Social Security. We'll get this out of the way. This is an article by Richard R. J. Eskow, a very good writer. It appeared on October 25th, 2022. And what R.J. discusses in this article is the possibility that the Republicans, if they win the House, will mount an attack on Social Security by creating a debt ceiling crisis coming this February or March. Of course, cutting and eventually destroying Social Security has been an objective of the Republicans since Social Security was passed in 1935. Here's a quote in this article from Representative James W. Wadsworth, who was a Republican of New York. He said the bill would create, quote, a power so vast, so powerful, as to threaten the integrity of our institutions and to pull the pillars of the temple down upon the heads of our descendants, unquote. And Republican Daniel Reed of New York said, quote, the lash of the dictator will be felt, colorful language. Those Republicans who voted for Social Security did so primarily for political cover. Historian Louis L. Gould explains that after failing to derail it, quote, most Republicans then went on record as endorsing the popular bill on final passage. That tactic enabled later generations of Republicans to disguise their party's visceral and abiding dislike of Social Security, but that remains. Alf Landon, the GOP's 1936 presidential candidate, derided Social Security as, quote, a fraud on the working man, unquote, and quote, a cruel hoax, unquote. Wendell Willkie in 1944 warned voters, quote, you will never collect a dollar of your Social Security. Of course, by this time, people had been collecting dollars from Social Security, so that was a little to say in 1940 when Willkie ran against um, FDR. But the 1944 Republican Party platform attempted to paper over the party's true feelings with language supporting many aspects of the New Deal, including Social Security, although the same platform, quote, rejected the theory of restoring government prosperity through government spending and deficits financing, unquote. The GOP held its fire for the most part during the Eisenhower years, primarily because Eisenhower was a supporter of Social Security. And its 1950 to 60 platforms even boasted of adding people to the rolls of Social Security. But the party's 1964 candidate, Barry Goldwater, lumped social insurance programs like Social Security and Medicare into a phenomenon he spoke of as welfareism, quote unquote. And in the conscience of a conservative, he said these programs would give, quote, unlimited political and economic power as absolute as any Oriental despot, quote, without turning, quote unquote, without turning each recipient, quote, into a dependent animal creature. Said programs like Social Security would erode political freedom and, quote, later on, after its beneficiaries have become its victims, after dependence on government is turned into bondage, and it is too late to unlock the jail. So you're getting the point. The Republican Party has visceral and long-term opposition to Social Security. And they, of course, have been leading a drive towards a privatization of Social Security, which would involve turning the government funds, the so-called Social Security Trust Fund, which isn't really a trust fund but an accounting record, they would turn that over to stock market managers to better the performance of the so-called Social Security Trust Fund. But in doing so, of course, they would open the whole thing up to volatility instead of guaranteeing a fixed amount each year in Social Security. Uh, the amount you get would be dependent on the success of the managers of Social Security um, in the stock market, making your retirement funding very, very risky, or much more risky. Anyway, so skipping over parts of this article, the opposition to Social Security still exists among the Republicans. It's very, very strong. Uh, there are proposals by Marco Rubio and Rick Scott to do great damage to Social Security. They're on the table right now. But the key thing this article is about is the threats before the election by Republicans who endorsed the idea of refusing to lift the debt limit until their demands for cutting Social Security or privatizing Social Security, okay, and also Medicare were met. No matter that could, quote, precipitate a global financial crisis and create enormous cost for the U.S. government, unless Democrats quickly capitulated. Rank and file Democrats pointed out that the debt limit ceiling was an arbitrary rule, called for its elimination or for raising it to an astronomically high number, but Biden rejected their call, saying, quote, that would be irresponsible. This demurral will make it harder for him to, quote, not yield, unquote, to Republican attacks on Social Security and Medicare, as he has promised to do. As for Politico's question, why would Republicans pursue such a major and unpopular change in the social contract? Why would they want to cut or privatize Social Security? Because they wanted to do it for 87 years. Because despite its unpopularity, their ideology and self-interest demand it. And because its Republican governors, judges, governors, and presidents have demonstrated the party has no interest in preserving democratic norms. So, that was the situation before the election. And as far as we know, it's the situation now. The Republicans plan on creating a debt ceiling crisis and using it as leverage to go after Social Security. So this morning, I open up my Common Dreams and I find there's a piece. Wait a minute, I should. Hang on just a second, folks. I should share this live stream to Facebook. So far, there are only four shares, so please do share, like, and subscribe this stream on YouTube. Please share it, okay, on Twitter, and please also share it on Facebook. As of this moment, oh wait, it turns out there are some shares. Okay, but not too many. Okay, back to the appearance of a new article. No sooner did Congress come back into session, or have they even come back into session? I don't know, but they shortly will. They'll be coming back for the lame duck session. And here are a number of them. That looks like Tina Baldwin, I believe. Not Tina Baldwin, I'm sorry. Tina, anyway, the senator from Wisconsin on the left. There's Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer's in the background, and Debbie Stabenow from Michigan is on the right, also known as Debbie Stab Me Now. And on the right, that looks like, I can't tell who that is over on the right. Might be Jerry Nadler. But anyway, so there's Elizabeth Warren speaking at a news conference on September 27th um, um, in Washington. And but here she is now. The headline here is Warren says debt ceiling should be abolished to end GOP threat to, quote, blow up the economy, unquote. This is by Jake Johnson. This morning, Senator Elizabeth Warren on Sunday said congressional Democrats should use the upcoming lame duck session, so it hasn't started yet, to eliminate the U.S. debt ceiling for good, warning that leaving the borrowing limit intact gives Republicans an opening to hold the economy hostage. All quite right. And that's the problem we've got right now. Warren continued. Many of these new Republicans who are coming in are people who are coming in with exactly one goal. Get Donald Trump elected in 2024, and they see that if they can create chaos in the economy, then they think that may move Donald Trump 1 inch closer to election. So we've got to take that away from them, take care during the lame duck, take care of raising the debt limit or getting rid of it altogether. Of course, much the better course would be to get rid of it altogether, but even that is not the best course, and as I shall explain in a few minutes. Anyway, the United States is expected to reach the debt ceiling, which dictates how much money the Treasury Department can borrow to meet the country's obligations, at some point early next year, in January or February, once again raising the prospect of a default that would be disastrous for the U.S. economy, wiping out millions of jobs and eliminating trillions of dollars in household wealth. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said she supports congressional action to raise the debt ceiling during the lame duck session. By Yellen has previously calls to completely abolish the debt ceiling, a proposal that President Joe Biden opposes. My advice to Joe Biden is to just change his mind about that. This is one of many stupid positions he holds. He needs to back off. He needs to open his mind to doing things in a new way, or he needs to resign from the presidency. Quote, I think it's just compromising the credit of the United States, unquote, said Yellen on Sunday. And quote again, casting doubt on the willingness of the United States to pay its debt is a devastating economic self-inflicted blow, unquote. By the way, in case you didn't know, the obligation of the United States to pay its debts is mandated in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. To raise doubt about paying debt goes against the Constitution. It is illegal. What the Republicans want to do is illegal. Of course, they have never been held accountable for that. But it goes against the obligation in the 14th Amendment. Everybody should note that. by proposing that they start a debt ceiling crisis in order to negotiate cuts in Social Security. Doing that is a violation of the Constitution. It is grounds for excluding them from the Congress. In the run-up to last week's midterm elections, top Republicans in the House, including the lawmaker in line for Speaker, specifically Representative Kevin McCarthy, Republican of California, suggested they would be willing to use the debt ceiling as leverage to pursue cuts to Social Security, Medicare, climate investments, and potentially other spending. While Republicans won far fewer seats than expected, they're still favored to take narrow control of the chamber, leaving Democrats with dwindling time to prevent GOP debt ceiling brinksmanship. By the way, I should mention here that as the days go by, it still looks like they will take narrow control of the chamber, but it's important to note that Democrats are still in the hunt, that if things work out in a specific way, it still would be possible for Democrats to get 219 seats, which is a majority. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it is, at this point, it's likely that the prediction of Ezra Wilson, which was last Thursday, that the final outcome in the race for the House, for House control, would be Republicans 220 and Democrats 215, that is still a very likely forecast. At least as likely as 221 to 214 or 222 to 213. Each of those possibilities are among the most likely at this point. There are still roughly 20 races undecided or 19 races undecided. Okay, and Democrats in these last races have been far outdistancing the Republicans in picking up House seats. Last I looked, of the last 22 House seats that were decided, Democrats had picked up 17, while Republicans picked up only 5. So the momentum in the last few races to still be decided seems to lie with the Democrats. That's just to buy their way. But I still expect that it will be the Republicans who have narrow control of the chamber, which raises other issues. For example, can they manage their own party, which is very divided between the extremists and the not-so-extremists? And those may well start to fight because the very extremists are highly ideological and won't want to give in on key points. Can Kevin McCarthy actually manage them? I don't know. They could run vacate the chair motions on Kevin McCarthy. We don't know how that's going to work out. Going back to the article, asked Sunday whether the Senate will act on the debt ceiling during the lame duck session, Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, said, "It is, quote, something that we will look at over the next few weeks," unquote. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told ABC on Sunday that the House's best shot at raising the debt limit is, quote, to do it now, unquote. It sounds like Nancy Pelosi is behind it. If she's behind it, she could get it out of the House this week. Actually, to hold that vote, okay, and get it out, I mean, that could be done in terms of the House, okay, in less than a half hour. It's a very, very simple bill, simply repealing the debt limit. That's it. Just deleting the debt limit law. Literally, it can be done in a half hour. Quote, there's great risk to even discussing not doing it, said Pelosi, pointing to the destructive 2011 standoff over the debt ceiling, which allowed Republicans to force spending cuts. Yes, to force spending cuts for years, not the 2011 standoff, but the 2012 to 2013 standoff. That allowed freezes in spending across the board, which we were feeling for years. Quote, so this is dealing with fire, you know, that fiscal cliff dispute. So this is dealing with fire when we're talking about the stability of our credit rating. Well, the credit rating stuff is crap because what happened in 2012 and 2013 is that the credit rating of the United States was reduced. It was reduced by Moody's, and I think it was reduced by Fitch also. Did that have any effect on the sale of debt instruments? Absolutely not. People flooded to buy Treasury debt instruments. They didn't care. They didn't care what the hell Moody's or the other credit agencies had to say because they knew that repayment of U.S. debt is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So what Pelosi said was just bullshit. Has nothing to do with our credit rating. What the private credit agencies decide to do in terms of the credit rating they give to the U.S. government, they have absolutely no influence on the government. And here's Bonnie. Hello, honey. Hello. So, during an event at AFL-CIO headquarters in Washington, D.C. on Sunday, Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair, specifically Pramila Jayapal, signaled that abolishing the debt ceiling is part of the bloc's policy agenda. Well, that's good. How hard are they going to fight for it? Anyway, Pelosi can pass this out of the House in one afternoon and send it to the Senate. Then it's up to Schumer to put it on the floor. And the question is, will he put it on the floor for a vote if Manchin and Sinema are against it? That's the issue. Will they be against it? There should be extreme pressure from the party, including the President of the United States, on them to vote to get rid of the debt limit. And if they fail to do that, there's something that Biden could do to avert the debt ceiling crisis. Last month, dozens of congressional Democrats implored their party's leader to, quote, take legislative action that will permanently undo the threat posed by the debt limit, a call that Social Security defenders echoed. Quote, Democrats, including President Joe Biden, focused heavily on Social Security during the campaign, unquote. Alex Lawson, executive director of Social Security Work, said in a statement last week, quote, they made sure voters knew about Republican threats to the program and promised that Democrats would protect Social Security. Quote, now it's time for Democrats, I should say this is a quote again from Alex Lawson, it's time for Democrats to keep that promise by raising or eliminating the debt ceiling in the final months of the year so Republicans can't use it as leverage to force cuts to Social Security and Medicare. I can't emphasize too strongly that it's within the power of Democrats to stop playing debt limit games with the Republicans. They don't need to raise the debt ceiling. They need to eliminate the debt limit law so that it is no longer there for the Republicans to use from time to time. If they don't do that, actually, even if they do that, what Joe Biden should do is to mint a $100 trillion platinum coin. Put that $100 trillion into the Treasury spending account, and then there would be no need to issue any more debt. I guarantee, well, first of all, those proceeds could be used to pay off the debt as it falls due. I predict that within a year, Republicans will come screaming to Democrats to please issue more federal debt because their Wall Street constituents need that federal debt as a safe harbor to park their cash in. Treasury securities are a safe harbor where they can earn interest and where they know their money will always be repaid and will always be saleable. So, to review, what the Democrats in Congress need to do is to eliminate the debt limit. Just pass a law now. Will they have the majority in both houses to put a bill to that effect on Biden's desk? And if he doesn't like it, let's see him veto it. So Republicans can use the debt limit law to coerce cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Whose fault is that going to be then? Joe Biden's. So the Democrats in the House and Senate need to lay a bill on his desk. He will sign it. If he doesn't, there should be an immediate campaign to get him to mint the $100 trillion coin. So there's plenty of money around to pay any debt that falls due. So that's all I have to say on that. So let's see what's going on here in your comments before I end. Amber Lee says, just popping in to say good morning, liked and shared. It says, I love RJ. He's a Facebook friend. Yeah, he's a Facebook friend of mine too, Amber Lee. And I love RJ too. Antonio Calhouse says, thank you, Professor. You are the best. But I am no longer a professor, of course. Antonio says, I know you're absolutely proficient on this, I followed you before. Thank you. I know you did, Antonio. I hope you're well. K. Ryan says, Dems better handle the debt ceiling now. Kay says, I shared in Facebook. But thank you very much, Kay. Okay, folks, this is it for this particular stream. But I will be back shortly. That is to say, I'll be back in roughly 20 minutes when I will be talking about, let's see, what will I be talking about in 20 minutes? I'll be talking about empowering democracy, the worst averted. I'll be talking about some of the results of the election. I don't mean the results in terms of electoral outcomes. Okay, I mean the results in terms of things we avoided because the Republicans will not have control of both houses, okay, of Congress. So, unless there are more comments, I will see you then. Thank you very much for coming. I'll see you at 12:10.